Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Roll the Dice with Dave. I hope everybody's having a good night. Before I get started, I actually wanted to give a shout out to the Lady Pirates out in West Texas at Lubbock Cooper High School. Their basketball team has made an unbelievable run, had an amazing season. Having been in Lubbock for two different times in my life, I just want to give those ladies love, especially during Women's History Month and yesterday being International Women's Day. So just wanted to give them a shout out for doing such an amazing job with their basketball season. Before we get started, I would like everybody who is tuning in on Facebook, go ahead and hit that like button and also hit that share button. Have an amazing guest tonight. I'm really excited to have her on. She's become such a celebrity. I feel so honored and privileged to actually have her on the podcast this evening. I can't wait to get involved in this conversation with her. Also, if you are tuning in on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to Roll the Dice with Dave. You can also find my Facebook page, Roll the Dice with Dave, where you get all the updates on upcoming guests and different topics that we are going to be discussing upcoming. So I hope everybody's having a great evening. And without any further hesitation, I am going to go ahead and bring my guest out. It is the real Dr. Jehu. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Yeah, you too. This is so fun.
How's life treating you? Everything going good?
It's good. You know, that pandemic life, it kind of hits you, kind of sneaks up on you, but we're making do.
Well, the crazy thing is that for me, officially 3 days away from the 1 year out when we got the notification at Flagler College, like, hey, we're getting ready to go into spring break, stay away. Don't come back afterwards. It's going to be a couple of weeks. Right. Mm-hmm. That was the email that went out. Were you at University of Delaware already at that point?
Yes, I had started at UD like just over 4 months before. So I had like just gotten my feet wet, and I was actually on the road with our women's basketball team for the conference tournament, and we had to it got canceled. So they literally did not play a game. I flew down there, stayed one night, and then we got in a bus and came back. It was wild.
That is crazy because you had just started there. And for me, I had started in August here at Flagler. So I'm getting ready, going into my second semester. All these great things going on. We have all these plans for students to be involved in so many things. And then everything just kind of came to a halt. And then I remember they're like, hey, don't come back. So if you can get your stuff the week after spring break, because we're not sure how long this is going to be. And then I didn't step foot back in my office until August. Right. So we're from like March to August. And then it took my computer like 8 hours to catch up with all the updates.
To reboot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that first day couldn't even work.
We opened a new building. So our sport performance team moved into this whole new building. So I literally worked in my office for 4 months and never worked in that office again, and went in and moved my stuff into a brand new building, which, I mean, that's really sick and amazing. But yeah, it's just so strange. So strange.
So I know we just jumped right into conversation, but I would like you to introduce yourself to everybody. if you don't mind, just please to give them a little something about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Christine Jehu. I use she, her pronouns. I am a licensed psychologist, and so my entire career has been working in the university setting, and I'm currently the sports psychologist at the University of Delaware. It's basically my dream job, and dreams really do come true, I guess. So yeah, that's what I do.
That is awesome. That's so cool. I want to jump in, in this introduction stuff, because I really wanted people to get to know you for who you are before we start jumping into some deep topics, because I was fortunate to have met you in May of 2016. So it's crazy to think that our friendship has spanned now almost 5 years.
I know.
And even though we've had different times where we've been in and out of each other's lives, it never feels like we've been out of each other's lives since we've met. So do you mind telling everybody how did we meet?
Yeah. So we met at this amazing experience called Leadership that I was invited to be a part of like 2 months after I had started at ECU. And so I had no idea what I was getting into, but they were like, it's a week-long immersive leadership experience for our students, and we want you to come and be part of the faculty. And I was like, okay, dope. I love leadership. This is great. And so we rolled up in a van Like we all like got in a van and then we just started driving there. And I don't think I knew anybody. I knew Mark, but I
Rasdorf,
didn't.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know. I don't think I knew a single one of you prior to that.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I had been at ECU for almost 12 years at that point, and just got asked to be a part of this thing. And here's the crazy part. So I was asked to be part of it, not by anybody who had been there for a long period of time that knew me, but the new guy, Eric Newble, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of got in, and he was like, have you guys ever thought of Dave Rivera? And everybody was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but never really thought about it before.
Right.
Right. So I really didn't know anybody else either that much.
Really?
I didn't know Miss Wanda really. I knew Mandy because there was an instance where there was a student I had busted cheating. So, right, of course, we ended up in front of Mandy.
Yep,
and I don't think she recognized me when I showed up to be a part of leadership, but I recognized her and I was like, oh my God, she was the one that overheard the case and was, she was all on my side and she was like, whatever you decide you want to do.
Yeah.
But that was like the only time we had met in 12 years. And then I made all these people, Demetrius,
so
right? Baskerville, Michelle Shuck. I had run into her different times, but I didn't know you were only at ECU for that short period of time because you fit so naturally. I thought you had been there forever and I just didn't know who you were. Right?
Nope.
2 whole months. two whole months being there. So one of my questions is, what do you think everybody's first impression of you was when we all first met you? And, getting in that van, it wasn't just any old van. It was kind of like the white creepy van that everybody kind of got into. It was one of those weird vans that everybody kind of squeezed into. So, but what do you think your first impression that you gave to everybody was?
I feel like people think that I'm really intense but really extra. That's what the kids are saying these days. Like, I don't know. I'm like over the top, but super serious at the same time.
All right. That's not the vibe I got, right? So
okay.
I don't know. No, honestly, the vibe I got was after being around the entire group, I kind of sat there and was like, man, do I actually belong in this room, right, with these people? Not from a bad sense, like these people are nuts, but I was sitting in there going, man, do I belong in this room? Because these are some top-notch individuals. Do I belong at this table? And I remember when we all had to go around and doing our introductions and kind of telling our stories, and hearing yours, I was just like, man, this woman's no joke. And then I heard Mandy's and I was like, man, this woman's no joke. And then Miss Wanda's, I'm like, man, this woman's no joke. And Demetrius, I'm like, man, this dude's no joke. And then, here I am doing mine. I was like, man, do I belong in this room? So I was very impressed with just you as a person, right? Not even like professionally or anything. I was just like, man, this is a top-notch individual. And I wonder if I actually belong at this table sitting across from this person. Then, of course, you gave birth to the quote of our leadership.
Oh, God.
I think it was you, right? Good snacks. Okay. So do you mind telling that story, how good snacks came about?
Okay, so I don't know if I remember exactly, but were we in a van or in a room or something? And
oh my gosh, we were in the debriefing room.
And somebody was like, who's bringing the good snacks, or do we have the good snacks? And I thought they said good sex. And I was like, what are we doing here?
That's right.
Leadership weekend. Here we go.
Because that was the quote after. It was like, man, we just need some good snacks. Yes. That was the quote of the.
That's what our group text message name became. Good snacks.
That's right. Good snacks. Good snacks. So, kind of jumping back again, getting to know a little bit about you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, like where you grew up, how you grew up, where you're from? Just kind of give me a little bit of skinny, because I just know little bits and pieces, and I would love for the audience to just get to know you a little bit more as well.
Sure. So I was born outside of Philadelphia, and we moved to upstate New York when I was 2. And so I don't really remember anything about Philly. And then, yeah, we lived in Rochester, New York. And that was super fun because I remember building snow people at the bus stop when we would have these wild blizzards and it'd be like, oh, 2-hour delay. And then we'd go to school. I danced when I lived up there. So apparently I was like some really great little dancer when I was young. But then we moved to Richmond, Virginia when I was 6. I think it was like just before my 7th birthday. And that's pretty much where I grew up. Started training in martial arts when I was there. My mom was like, don't you want to dance? And I was like, nope, sure don't. I want to take karate. And so my brother and I trained and we got our black belts. And I think a big through line of my growing up story has been sports. So played soccer, did springboard diving, like all the things. And just hung out in Richmond growing up, playing soccer. It's like really what I did. I was like the girl who played soccer. Oh, and I was on dance team in high school for 2 years. So that's
oh my
thing.
God, did you just spirit fingers?
I did. Because you have to get the visual because it's like not me, but I totally was.
Man, I didn't know you did martial arts, but that I think also goes into another impression that I get, in that people are nice to you because, one, you're just a genuine person, but two, they're probably afraid you can kick their ass, right?
Valid.
Is that a valid statement?
That was growing up. That was, yes, 100%. People did not F with me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So did you have any nicknames growing up?
So CJ, so my initials, it was easy to say on the soccer field. And so CJ turned into Siege, and then any variation of like, I don't know, whatever you can do with Siege. I think in college, some point it would be like Siege Izzle or something. I don't know. It was like weird shit that we did. My brother called me Nerbs for a while. I don't really know where that came from, but when we were younger, he called me Nerbs. But mostly just CJ.
CJ, no, that's cool.
Yeah.
What do you think people misunderstand about you the most?
Oh, misunderstand about me the most.
Or I guess misperception, or
I have been told that I think people misinterpret my confidence as bitchiness.
That's crazy. See, and I've never got, now the confidence I can see, right? And maybe that's the character piece that is just so charismatic and appealing to so many. I know that was one of the things I liked about you the most, was your level of confidence when you walked into a room. And it's almost like it was mesmerizing. You walk into a room and people knew you were there, right? Not because you were arrogant or over the top, but because of the confidence that you had when you walked in the room. All you have to do is just ask Don Donaldson, right?
Don Donaldson.
So I tell you what, I love that kid.
He's a good dude.
He is. And, every time I see him, there's a little bit of jealousy, right? Because anybody that looks at him and doesn't go, man, that's just a good looking dude. Right? He looks like he was touched by the hand of Greek gods and they sculpted his body. I mean, he does. So I saw him a couple of years ago when I went back to Greenville. And I was like, dude, can you get any more ripped? Can you make us all feel a little worse? I love that guy, man. I absolutely love him to death.
Yeah.
But he was one of your biggest cheerleaders at Leadership. He was all about Christine J. Yeah, he was. He was all about.
I had a good crew. They showed me some love, that's for sure.
They did. When do you feel your best self?
Ooh. Well, the first thing that came to mind was when I'm on the soccer field. That's just like one of my happy places. But I mean, I would have to say I feel my best self when things are really aligned. And I know that sounds like super cliche and people are like, yeah, no shit, when your life is aligned, like that's great. But like, okay, let me explain. So for me, what that looks like is, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
The Enneagram. Is that like
It's like a personality typing system.
Oh, so it's like the Myers-Briggs thing and all
It's
that
way
stuff?
better. Like,
Way
I don't know
better?
why
Okay.
they didn't teach this in graduate school, because I like read the book and I salivate because I'm like, oh, okay. So once I heard about this and I heard about, I'm an Enneagram type 3, which is the achiever. And when I read this, I was like, somebody out there understands me. Like, all of the things where people are like, why do you do this? Or why do you have so many routines? Or why do you blah, blah, whatever? I'm like, because the world makes sense when I have all those things, right? So for me, it's like when I am invested in things where I'm growing, where I feel a sense of achievement, but I also feel like I am serving, giving back, making a difference on the world. And like exercising, like playing soccer or riding my spin bike, things like that, having that balance of the nerdy, the achievement, the serving, but also like feeling really connected with my body is important.
Oh, no, I mean, I like that. So what is it? The Enneagram?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yes.
Because
It's
I'm
good
big on the
stuff.
Myers-Briggs. I've also done the True Colors and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, but I'm gonna have to remember the
Enneagram is really like, if you can listen to some podcast episodes, because the true teachers of the Enneagram teach through like the narrative practice, right? So it's about like, they teach you about the different types and you see what you resonate most with, because it's more about our motivations and less about our behaviors. And so that's like, you're not supposed to type other people, because it really is that true like core motivation. So there is an assessment out there that you can do, but I like to encourage people to listen to some podcasts about it, look it up, read the types, see if there's a couple that resonate with you, and then like sit with it for a little bit, rather than just going to take a test, because I can send you the one that I trust and you can pay $12 and do it. But
you know what? If you trust it, is good enough for me, right? That's like a friend of the real Dr. Jehu is a friend of mine, right? So I have a couple more questions for you in just the introduction piece. So if you had a chance to sit down with 3 people, alive or dead, and have dinner and just have a conversation about whatever you wanted, who are the 3 people and what do you talk about?
Ooh. So the first person that comes to mind is my grandma Jehu. She died when I was 2 or 3 years old. So I never really got to meet her, obviously, with memory. And I have just heard so many stories about who she was and how fabulous she was. And a lot of people in my family said that we're similar. So I would just love to know her. She's always the first one that comes to mind. This question, I'm not like a big famous person.
Oh no, that's good, man. This is gravy. Whatever you got for us is jewels, is gems. It's good.
I think I would. Okay, so I'm really into watching like period pieces. So 200, like 150, 200 years ago, and maybe like medieval times, Europe. Like, I would love to speak to women from like back in the day, and just hear about like what life is like, what's it like being a woman. And if there were any people who are like queer identified, they probably didn't have the language at that point, but like women loving women from 200 years ago, 500 years ago, that would be really fascinating to have conversations with them.
No, I'll tell you, I like that. I do like that. And the last one I have for you is, what is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
That's it.
Is that surprising?
No, it really was. I kind of knew that's where it was going to come. Because from all I can remember, that's the one that sticks out. But I just had to ask, just in case it was something different. Right?
Yeah. It has power, so
it does. It's one of my dad's favorites too. Whenever it gets out there, right? So earlier you talked about a podcast, and I want to do a little review, right? I like to talk about people's interests, different things like that, but this one right here, I actually want to again talk about you. So you have this podcast called Beyond the Couch, and when you rolled it out, I started listening to it. Right, I was like, you know what, I'm going to support one of my fellow leader shapers and kind of see that day 7, see what's going down.
Yeah.
Now it's like, man, this is dope, right?
Thank you.
This is legit. And what I like about it is your advertisement of it is 100% like spot on.
Right. So mental health conversations without the psychobabble.
And I can sit there and listen to it, and I've recommended it to people. I'm like, hey, check it out. So anybody who watches this, you definitely want to check it out. And I think I've come out of listening to every podcast, either if I'm able to sit and listen to the whole thing at once, or if I'm like, in between things, walking, plug in the headphones, feeling better, like after, even if it's just little clippets.
Good. That's the point.
One of the things I want to ask you, and here I'm asking you because I want you to go ahead and talk about it. The only way you know how to is real.
Yeah.
Why is your podcast so dope?
Well, there's not a formula. It's just me. Like, it's just me talking about things that I'm seeing folks struggle with, and whether that's themes that are coming up in my clinical work, it's watching other people's Instagram stories and seeing the questions that they have and the shit that's happening in their life. I just respond and want to put something out in the world that is, hey, I see you, I hear you, your struggles are valid, they're real. And here's a couple of tips and tricks. I like to call them life hacks. And, if there's something you can take from it to adapt into your life, then my job's done. I
know, because a lot of people talk about the it factor. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then when you say, hey, what's the it factor? People are like, it's it. It's just it. When I listen to your podcast, I'm like, this has the it factor. It does. And, I hope other people get out of it what I'm getting out of it, because I just sit there and I'm like, man, this is really good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
It really is. And that's why I said I have to ask the question, what makes it so dope? And you're like, it's just me being me. It's such a crazy thing because that sounds so simple.
Yeah.
But man, it's just really good. It is really good, really enjoyable. I hope a lot of people do check it out.
Thanks.
What was the motivating force? And I know you talked about a little bit, but what drove you to finally say, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do this.
Yeah. So story time. I'm like in my head, I'm like, let's go back. So if you listen to today's episode, I'm talking about the pandemic. I launch on Tuesdays as well, which is cool. And I found myself in this place of I had left ECU and have been at Delaware. It's like just becoming myself again and feeling so energized by what was ahead of me. So I'm just like feeling this energy build in my life again that had been lost, honestly, since my dad died. And I knew in 2020, I don't know, there was like this buzz in the world, like I want to create something. And at first I thought it would be a blog. And then I was like, I'll write a book. And then that just wasn't working. And my friend Megs is a podcaster, and she had me on her podcast a handful of times. And I just fell in love with it. And I found myself being drawn to different types of podcasts in that season and really loving the types of podcasts where it's just two friends sitting down, shooting the shit, catching up, maybe talking about some important stuff. Maybe you're talking about cheese. I don't know. But there's just something about it that you're like, I want to be friends with these people. And so I had the itch, and I had been like looking up microphones and starting to dabble, kind of that like contemplation phase of behavior change, if you will. I'm getting nerdy, but then it was in November when you hosted all of us like back here on the show for
I got the Thanksgiving. We are family.
Yeah. And honestly, you're like my biggest hype man, because in that you were like the real Dr. Jehu, which was my freaking Twitter handle that I made at Leadership. I don't tweet, right? But it was that moment, right? Like getting off of that call, feeling the energy again, and just like, I don't know, it was like that fire under my ass that was lit, that was like, Christine, you can do this. Just go fucking do it. And so probably a day or two later, I reached out to this woman I'm connected to on Instagram who hosts a podcasting course. And I was like, yo, when are you opening for January? Because I'm in. And so then I just let it simmer. And I knew that I wanted to do a mental health podcast because that's what I do. That's what I could talk about all day. And you do change lives. And that's so good. And yeah, and so I took this course, and it was this beautiful balance between the technical aspects and the mindset. And it was designed to get people from idea to launch in 4 weeks. This is not my course, people, but I'm like pitching it. And so that was January. And then I launched 2 weeks into February. Like, here we go.
And you mentioned, what is it, Megs? You call her Megs?
Yeah.
Because you did, was it Beer and Banter?
Yep.
I think that's the one I had come across and heard it. That podcast is really good too. And I had mentioned, I teach diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm always looking at different ways to try and connect. I'm a 47-year-old New Yorican, right? And down here dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, we're almost like 2 generations apart. And even though I have kids their age, there's still that gap. So trying to communicate on their level, sometimes just being in there talking about it, it's not going to work. And I'm like, hey, check out this podcast. Oh. And it's crazy when I like, hey, check out this podcast, or we're going to listen to 5 minutes of this in class, or we're going to do this in class.
Oh, that's so cool.
And the podcast can say the exact same thing I'm saying, except when I say it, it's like, right? Yep. Podcast comes on, they're like, oh, Rivera, man, let me tell you. And then they're like breaking it down on some deep level. And I was like, who knew they had this in them? So I am big on trying to check out such a wide variety, because I checked that one out again. Yeah. I saw that you were on it. I was like, I'm going to support my Leadership sister. I'm going to go check it out. And that one was really good too. Right. So now I find myself just every now and then kind of jumping in. Yeah. But I tell you, you guys are doing some amazing, amazing good stuff.
Thank you.
So with this question, I know you could say, hey, anybody could, but listen, but if you could reach somebody, who would you say should be listening to your podcast?
Yeah. So a big part of the podcast is helping to reduce the stigma of mental health, but particularly help seeking. So one of the things that I do right now, all of my guests are other clinicians. And so we have a set of questions where I ask them about, what does the first session look like for you? And then what does ongoing treatment look like with you? Because what I found is a lot of people who have had a negative therapy experience in the past, it's been because of a misalignment of expectations of what therapy is all about. And so what I want to do is really help people get a sense of like, okay, what you can expect in that first session. Like shit's not going to, like, your life isn't going to change overnight by going to your intake session. That's literally the information gathering session. But then also showing that it is so much about the fit and knowing what you're looking for and finding the right person that can help you on that journey, right? Like if you need treatment for an eating disorder, you're not going to come to me because I'm not an eating disorder specialist. But if you want to heal your depression and be a kick-ass soccer player and you're a UD athlete, like come to me because we can do all of that, right? And so, so it's breaking the stigma. So it really actually can reach a really wide audience. So the people who are curious about therapy, who, or maybe are considering going to therapy, but they might be a little bit scared. They don't know what to look for in a clinician, or maybe they don't quite know, like, what does therapy even do? Like, how does talking help? Right? Those are people that can benefit from the podcast. And even those people who just want to get a couple of tips and tricks and tools and make some tweaks in their lives, or, just get a little bit of a like a pump up kind of session, right? Because that's my vibe too, is I want to empower you and give you tools while also inspiring you to go make big moves in your life so that it's fucking amazing life to live.
I tell you, it is awesome, and I hope more people check it out. I want to revisit this towards the end so we can give some specifics. So hopefully people can go check it out.
Yeah.
I want to move into what I refer to as HTM highlights. It's my area, and I always like to ask guests certain things about hospitality. And today I was just looking at some recent updates, and it's a little depressing right now, but hopefully it'll get better. So I was just looking at the hotel industry just put out a notification saying, hey, we're going to get 200,000 new jobs, but we're still going to be 500,000 jobs behind where we were pre-pandemic. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Right? So there's still a prediction that half of the hotel rooms in the United States are going to go unoccupied. So they're predicting that even though occupancy is going to go up, it's only going to go up to about 50% occupancy.
Wow.
Business travel is projected to be 85% down until April of 2021, and then it's barely projected to tick up.
Wow.
Yeah, these were just some crazy stats that I found, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
56% of consumers, they said they're expecting to go ahead and travel for leisure purposes. What's crazy is this matches pre-pandemic numbers. So the same number of people are saying, yeah, we're, hey, we definitely have something set up.
Yeah.
We're going to go do this is what we're going to do. And the numbers are very similar to pre-pandemic. They're actually not that different. Right. It shows how much business travel kind of solidified the industry.
Yeah.
A lot of people said they feel good because they see vaccines as the key to travel. Right.
Okay.
So, and everybody now is saying that cleanliness is the number one factor to determine when and if they're going to travel. So with all of these stats that I found, I'm going to give you a few more because I'm going to ask you specific questions about these things.
Okay.
The food and beverage industry is expected to be down $240 billion.
Oh, right? Damn.
And then there are expected to be over 110,000 eating and drinking places that are either temporarily or permanently closed as of the beginning of January 2021.
110,000.
110,000. So, my industry is taking a beating.
Yeah.
But my question to you, because I understand why it's taking a beating, but my question to you is, have you been going out to eat? Do you have plans to travel? Are you kind of holding off? How are you, I guess, engaging the leisure side of life since this pandemic?
Yeah. Well, I haven't, aside from being at that tournament, I think I've gone to Richmond in my car to see my mom once or twice through this whole shebang. Definitely haven't gotten on an airplane. But it's not for not that I didn't want to, right? I think part of it is just the timing of being at a new job and being in a new area and all of those things. Sorry, did you tell me what you asked me again? Because I just
how have you been? Actually, we'll jump into the idea of how are you engaging in your social aspects of life? Is it involving hospitality kind of out that way, or is it not? Right. And then I want to get to a question that actually a buddy of mine has asked that you could see posted after we do that.
Yeah. So I think I have been I've been ordering out more, and partially to support folks in in the hospitality industry, right? Because I'm able to, so I wanted to support people. I think the last time that I was at a restaurant, ate in a restaurant, was the day that Joe Biden was here in Wilmington, Delaware to give his acceptance speech. And let me tell you, I supported the industry that day at the restaurant, at the bars. But yeah, just being real here, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, I'm vaccinated at this point. I feel very fortunate to have been in that first phase of healthcare workers, and so I feel a little bit more freedom to be able to get out and move about the world a little bit differently. So yeah, we'll see. I have like a bunch of places up here that I want to go and see, like go to the beach, go to the mountains and all of that. But, timing.
Hey, once things get settled, you and your wife are more than welcome to come down and stay with the Riveras and enjoy
Thank
beautiful
you.
St. Augustine.
Yeah.
And I've been telling everybody, because at first I was worried about this, but now I think it's actually something to be a little excited about. My wife and I and our family have been gifted a boat, so we'd love to take you on a little boat ride around. Take a little boat ride, right? So we have become
Amazing.
full-fledged Floridians, and we would
That's
love to host
awesome.
you and your wife on
Thanks.
a little cruise around the St. Augustine area.
Oh,
We have great wineries, we have great distilleries, we have great
nice.
food, we have great culture here. Always welcome in the Rivera household.
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to start calling you the real Dr. Jehu Rivera. That's what I'm going to say.
I love it. I love
it. So I want to jump to this question. It's a little divert from where we were going, but I think it's a great question. So do you believe that medication should be given as well as therapy?
Yeah. So, Stephen, that's a really great question. And I think you will get differing answers based off of who you speak to. I certainly think that medication is a fantastic tool when it is appropriate, right? I don't think that anyone should just be given medication with no conversation even around therapy and the benefits of therapy. So there's a lot of research that shows that the combination of medication and therapy is the higher effectiveness than just medication by itself. So again, it really depends. There's a lot of things that folks come to treatment for that you wouldn't meet the criteria to even receive medication. So very individualized, but certainly the strongest in combination with therapy.
So there were a couple of comments, and I wanted to put this one up and highlight it. One of the comments was, I love how real it is and how it makes therapy seem not as scary, referring to your podcast.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks,
that's
girl.
something that I think more and more people are coming to grips with. I know growing up, the idea of going to a mental health therapist meant you were broken in some way, shape, or form. The stigma that went with it. And I'm not going to lie, especially being a Latino male, right? Latinos and the machismo is one of the toughest things sometimes to deal with. The idea that you need mental therapy, especially as a man. And actually, I limit it to Latino. There's a lot of cultures, right? You can almost say men in general, the idea of needing mental health help is seen as, oh, you're not as much of a man as somebody who doesn't. And I agree with that comment. Your show really does give a calming aspect that, hey, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with needing a little mental help with your health every now and then. That's part of the reason why I started this, because here we are in a pandemic. And not that I don't love my wife and kids, but after a while, you just need to kind of expand the bandwidth and interact with some other people, right?
100%. Yeah, you need the thing that's yours for sure.
So that's a big thing. I think that's a great question. Thank you so much for that, Stephen. I want to move into the next little piece. I did a podcast or a broadcast one time, and we were talking about cancel culture, and it seems to have kind of brought its way back into it. And I want to talk to you about a couple of the topics that have come up. But then I want to ask you and see if you can give some insight on why you think so many people get so triggered to maybe almost go to a point where people feel that they're going so far that it's really pushing the level of reason as far as these conversations. So one of them was Dr. Seuss. And I want to say about 98% of the people that on the poll I put out said that they're good with Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, there's still a couple of percent of the people that were not happy with the situation, that they, for whatever reason, one way or the other, feel that Dr. Seuss should not be read anymore and should not be promoted. I don't think their viewpoints or their opinions should be discounted at all.
No.
But why do you think so many people got so triggered with the Dr. Seuss conversation, in that he needs to be canceled, he's a racist, he's a bad guy? Why do you think people get so inflamed with those types of conversations?
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing in our culture right now is just a real polarization, right? From children's books to, and I'm like, yes, there were racist things in some of these books, right? But we're talking children's books to politics and everything in between. And so many thoughts right now. And so, when we're getting so polarized and there's not that room for healthy discussion and healthy growth in the middle is when we fall into the extremes, and you have to be this or that. You're either for me or against me. It's all or nothing. And there are very few things in life that truly are that all or nothing piece. And so, what I'm wondering, and it's going to be different for every person, but likely there is this space that somebody is wanting to navigate in the in between, but there's not been a relationship or a situation that's cultivated the ability to navigate that with somebody else. Right. I saw this beautiful Instagram post, and I wish that I had screenshotted it or remembered what account it came from, but it was talking about what is it, Seuss Enterprises? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what they're doing is actually showing awareness and growth and positive forward movement, right? They recognize that there are books with racist pieces and they are taking them out of circulation. It doesn't mean that and I read an article showing like the progression of the different books and when they were published and all of that. And I'm not saying that anything that was in there was okay, or like, I'm not arguing that the time, like, it was because of the times. No, it was fucking racist. But you can see that there was growth. So Seuss was having growth and was making changes. And there are books that are still in circulation because they're not racist. They're not harmful to other people. So that is showing that we can still exist, that there's room for growth, evolution, for repairing when we've done something wrong, intentionally or unintentionally. But yeah, this cancel culture piece, I think it paralyzes a lot of people, and it just creates like so much divisiveness that if we just leaned in a little bit with some curiosity and gave people space to like work through some shit and have care for them and compassion and like humanity for one another, would be a much nicer place.
Yeah, well, see, and the issue I have is there are so many things I like with so many people that have had issues. So I grew up, born in 73, grew up through the 70s and 80s. So here we have Michael Jackson, right? Pop.
Yeah.
Listen to his music, and then hear the allegations of pedophilia, right?
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there, you're like, man, I grew up on this music and love it, and now here's this. And then now there's another one, right? So I'm gonna dig a little. So now that you have, here's Bill Cosby. I grew up on Bill Cosby show, right?
Yeah.
Right? So then you have those situations, and you're sitting there going, and now this, because I sat there and I'm like, okay, there's these 6 books that Seuss Enterprises is talking about removing, but I grew up learning how to read with these Dr. Seuss books, right?
Yeah,
so there's such a tie into it. It was a big celebration up until just last week, right? Where schools are, hey, we're going to have Dr. Seuss week and we're doing this, dress up as your favorite characters. And I would dress my kids up and they would go to school, and that it just leads to that conflict there with some of it. So I was just curious, because now Pepe Le Pew, Pepe Le Pew's under fire because he kisses women without their permission, right? But I remember growing up as a kid, it was like, Pepe, we're sitting there laughing, and now it's this big topic. And I know so many people that are one side or the other. And again, not trying to discount somebody's feelings, because I think it's legitimate what some people feel. Right. But it's just such a crazy aspect. And I want to touch on this tweet. Burger King recently put out a tweet, and I just want to get your thoughts. I know they had good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They sent out a tweet that said, "Women belong in the kitchen," on International Women's Day. Do we cancel Burger King?
Well, We can have a lot of conversations about why we might not want to put our money into Burger King just for our own health and well-being, but that's the story for another day. Yeah, I mean, you gave me the background to that, and like that makes sense. But like, how many characters is a tweet now? And there were a lot left after women belong in the kitchen, right? Like, throw a little hashtag in there, like women in leadership, or like whatever, give some background. Link to an article, buddies. Like, come on. Yeah, I mean, like you said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but that brings up there's so much behind what we say and what we do and our experiences and our worldview and what we're immersed in every day, right? Like, this is Burger King's it's their thing. It's what they're paying attention to. And maybe they needed to give their media team a little bit more background into what they were going after. But like, what was that the wrong tweet? Yeah. But like, come out and share what you're working towards. And if you really believe that women belong in the kitchen, why don't you highlight and elevate the voices of the women who are in the positions that you're encouraging them to be in, right? Like, highlight them, celebrate them, and not use a phrase that like really just check it out with one other person and you would know that's not okay.
Well, here's the crazy, because this came up in a little conversation in my class. We teach a food and beverage management class.
Yeah.
So everybody is sitting there going, how does this make it through? I don't understand how this makes it through. And a lot of the women in the class were like, this is just ridiculous. How does this make it through? And I go, because the ones that are reviewing it are a group of men that just thought this was an okay tweet.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they think it's funny, but they've got the inside knowledge of what the organization is going for.
So it made for an interesting conversation.
I bet.
Because when I said, hey, this is what Burger King's doing initiative, well, a lot of people were like, oh, I didn't even know that was happening. And I was like, yeah, neither did 98% of the country. So
right.
I want to move into the next little piece, and we get to talk about a little bit about day 7, a leadership concept. Yes, day 7. So we know part of your day 7 is your podcast.
Yeah.
What are some of the other day 7 things you got going on?
Well, the job that I'm in, my day job is my day 7. Like, this job that I'm in is the job that I got into the field of psychology to do, which is like every day I walk into that building and I'm like, I get to do the things. It's so exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
awesome. But the other thing is I have always had this strange desire to write a book. And the other day I actually just started putting words in a document for a book that I think I might actually finish.
Nice.
I don't know when, but it's like in process.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So maybe the next time I have you on here, it'll be New York Times best-selling author, the real Dr. Jehu.
I don't know about that, but I mean, I'm like really leaning into this idea of really wanting to support people and understanding what it means to get support and to go to therapy. So, it's gonna kind of be like the podcast, but in written form of what this looks like, and here's how you can prepare to go to therapy, and here's some like journal prompts to kind of get you ready, and how you find somebody and all that good stuff.
So you touched on something. You said it's going to kind of be like the podcast, to kind of get people ready for therapy. So I've been meaning to ask you this question for years, and I don't think the opportunity has ever come up, and now I have the opportunity. Yeah. But where does a therapist go for therapy, right? And when I say that, because you absorb so much of everybody else's, weights. Mm-hmm. And even when you try to help them alleviate their weight, sometimes you may take on their weights on as your own. Is that a fair statement? Sometimes where you feel so much for this person that it starts to weigh on you a little bit. How do you deal with if I'm saying, I don't even know if I'm verbalizing it correctly.
Sure.
How do you go about dealing with that? And when you need therapy, how do you get your therapeutic or your mental health relief?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are the keepers of people's stories and people's truths and oftentimes people's secrets. And it's an honor, and it's certainly not something to take lightly. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about therapy is that we are the ones responsible to quote unquote fix somebody, and that we are going to have all the answers. And the truth is that a therapeutic process is about helping the person across from us or who's coming to work with us have a better understanding of their own life experience, what lessons they've learned from it. We can hold up a mirror, shine a light, kind of journey alongside, but we're more of the guide and less of the answer. So it's really therapy done well is when we support the person who's come to us for help start to identify what they already have inside of them. And sure, we're going to teach them some stuff. We're going to give them some tips and tricks. We're going to throw in, I'm going to throw in Jehuisms. That's part of it. But my responsibility is not to fix them. My responsibility is to guide you and encourage you to do the work when you leave the office, because therapy extends. The real work happens when you leave the office, right? You have to put the stuff into practice. And so in doing that, we become like, we don't have to carry the weight and the responsibility of what the person is going to do, right? There are times in which we do have a responsibility to help people remain safe and all of that, but the bulk of the work is supporting folks on that journey. So knowing that it's not my responsibility to do the fixing, that creates some of that appropriate separation.
Okay.
And then, but there are the days, right, when somebody comes in with a story that's really challenging or a story that hits close to home. Anytime somebody tells me that a member of their family, particularly their father, has received a cancer diagnosis, I'd have to hold back tears because my father died of cancer, right? So there are some of those pieces that are highly, highly relatable. But I do my work on my own. I don't do my work with my clients.
With your client.
Yeah. Yeah. I will often say that we get clusters of clients based off of what we need as clinicians to hone our skills or to, identify something that's going on for us, but that's not therapy, right? I don't know if that made any sense, but, it makes sense to clinicians when I'm like, the universe gives you what you need, right? Especially clinicians in training. It's like, oh, so it's hard for me to work with this type of population. And then it's like, boom, boom, boom. The next 5 referrals are XYZ, whatever it is. So in that way, right? The universe gives us what we need. But, for me, that's where the routines and the exercise and doing the podcast, right? The things that keep me grounded in my outside life help me show up the best version of myself as a clinician. So exercise is my therapy. Therapy is therapy, right? There are clinicians out there that specialize or like working with other clinicians. It is a little bit weird at first when you're like, oh, okay, you're a therapist, I'm a therapist. This is fun, right? The tricks. Let me just I will give you a monologue of your intake. Cool. No, I'm not going to, don't have self-harm, that sort of thing. But yeah, when I was at ECU, I actually had a lot of students who were in the various clinical training programs request to work with me because I also am a supervisor and I just really enjoy helping clinicians grow. But it is this fine art of it's not that therapy is not supervision, right? But there's a cool understanding of what they're going through as they're training.
So we do have a question that says, so do you have personal aha moments when dealing with people with similar problems you have or maybe dealing with? It's a good question, Murph.
That is a really good question. Aha moments. I think probably earlier on in my career and when I was training, I would have some of those where I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, I can't shine a light on this for somebody and fucking ignore it in my own
my own
life, you
life.
know? And I'm like, well, you know, like I had this really bad breakup in grad school, and my next client was somebody who was going through a breakup, and I'm like, what are you doing to me? Right? Like, come on. Yeah, but I, you know, early on, I made this commitment to myself that I would never ask a client to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And so sometimes there may be those interventions that I would want to give, or a direction where I was thinking, okay, we could really do some good work here, but I hadn't done it myself to the extent that I knew I needed to do it in my life, right? It's not like we don't have all of the same experiences as our clients. So, yeah, part of being a therapist is doing your own work so that, you know, we, as corny as it is, like we are the tool in the room. And so if we're not sharp, if we're not taking care of ourselves, if there's a part of our blade that's dull, we need to tend to it and shine it up. And so that means going to therapy. It means if we need medication, taking the medication. It's building our support systems, taking care of our bodies, all of that.
Cool. That was actually a really good question. Thanks
Yeah.
for that, Murph. I want to pivot to this one piece because I know you're open about your sexuality. I know you have a same-sex partner. You guys have been married for how long now, if you don't mind me asking?
So when did we did leadership this summer of 2016. So we got married in December of 2016.
Oh wow, man, it seems like yesterday. God,
Yeah.
time's flying.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, I had talked to you about a situation a friend of mine is dealing with where his child has come out. What advice would you possibly have for a parent who's unsure how to deal with their child coming out to them? And I'm trying to think of the best way to word it, not deal with it like it's a problem, but how do they deal with, how do they deal with being supportive, showing that they are an ally, that they are understanding, that they're there to support the child no matter what is going on, which may appear to be different than some of the behaviors that they've exhibited in the past in their life. So what advice might you give for somebody who is trying to navigate this situation?
Yeah. So I have a handful of thoughts. The first thing I would say is be curious and lean in with love and curiosity. And if you find yourself getting pulled into those binaries, right? Like, and the scripts and what society says we're supposed to do, right? The heteronormative pieces. And particularly for folks who their children may not fall in the gender binary, right? They may be trans or they may be non-binary, right? So they don't identify with the genders as they've been prescribed in our culture. Be curious, right? And do your research. Your child is not your thesaurus or your dictionary, right? Like they are going to have their own unique experience and they're going to be navigating it in real time. So do your research and ask the kind of the basic questions, like ask Google, because Google will have answers for you, and then sit and absorb that for a while and observe and support your child. One of the things that I said to one of my clinicians in training one time, they were like, I've never worked with somebody in the coming out process. Like, how do I help somebody with their like sexual identity? I was like, okay, have you ever helped somebody as they were changing their major? Yeah, totally. All the time. Got that. Okay, so can you apply some of the same curiosity around that and supporting them navigating what that shift in their identity means if you came in as a business major and all of a sudden you're going to study music, or your whole life you've been playing baseball and now you want to go figure skate, right? Like nobody's shitting their pants about somebody changing sports, right? Like, come on. So can we be curious? Okay, tell me about that. What's your experience of this been? Asking those open-ended questions, and also giving your child permission to set boundaries around when and what they're willing to talk about in the moment. Because sometimes they're going through it and they don't have the answers, and they're not lying to you, and they're not trying to keep you in the dark, but they just may not have the language for it yet. So if you can start to bring in queer media, right? Like, are you watching things on TV that have queer representation? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to, right? My pal Megs has got Out What Now. Like, you can listen to that. So start to hear the stories of other people and know that not two people's experiences are exactly the same. And you mentioned this piece about what if they're not acting like they did before. There's this really cool research article that I read when I was writing my dissertation, and I don't remember who wrote it, so sorry about that. But there's this like the concept was we have our birth year, right? So I don't know how old I am. I'm 26. I'm not 26, I'm 36. Good grief. 26. Woo, whippersnapper. No, okay, so like I'm 36. But let's say, we'll use me for example. When I came out, I was 18. So biologically, I was 18. But when I came out, I was a baby in my identity as a lesbian. And so what do babies do within the first few months, few years of their life? They're crawling around, they're touching things, they're putting things in their mouth, they're like learning new language, right? They're fumbling through the world. So if you can take that, like our kind of general like developmental stages of life and layer that on top of where that person is, some of their behaviors, especially for folks who are coming out later in life, or folks who are coming out, say, like in their early 20s, they may be acting like a 5-year-old. Well, yeah, because they're in the early stages of their life and that part of their identity. So it's going to feel really strange to like look at a 20-something-year-old who's acting like a 5-year-old. But if you can say, like, is this the 5-year-old in their sexual identity, you can have some grace there and have an understanding that they are just trying to fucking make sense of the world. Yeah. And now it's not going to be like a year for year. It's going to be condensed, right? Because our frontal lobes are a little bit more formed. That can help you like have this understanding and grace and compassion for the person who's kind of fumbling through the world, because we all got to figure it out somehow. And it's looking back, it's not always pretty.
I tell you, you put that as such an Christy put it up. She loved that analogy. Right? I would have never thought about it that way. Yeah. That is a great analogy. That's why you're the GOAT, right? That's why you are the GOAT, Dr. Jehu. So,
listen, I read it in some research. It was not my research. I'm just
that's right.
spreading the love.
Right. So as we kind of bring things together into this final piece, I want to give you an opportunity just to share any last thoughts or anything that you want to address related to what we talked about, or if it's something different. And please make sure you let know how people can connect with you, follow you, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I'm going to take a quote from Dr. Kelly Rudolph, who was was the first guest on my podcast, and to say in this season, be kind to yourself. There's so much going on. We talked about cancel culture, and I touched on the pandemic. Even if you don't see it, there's chronic stress all around us, and it's sneaky. It's real sneaky, especially when it's like a little bit of stress in a lot of areas compiles. And so there's not always that one thing that we can put our finger on and say, okay, I'm going to address this and make it, and like, that's going to make it better, because it's little snippets of things in a lot of areas of our life. So be kind to yourself. Yeah. And then where you can find me, so you can subscribe to Be on the Couch anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you want to rate and review, subscribe, all of that good stuff, I would love it. And on Instagram, that's where I like to hang out. I'm at The Real Dr. Jehu. And yeah, I'm not super active on the feed and in stories right now. It's just lower on my priorities. Also, like, my days go like this back to back to back, so I don't have a lot of time to be posting some shit, but I am active in my DMs, so if you reach out, if you tag the podcast, drop your takeaways, I 100% will reshare it and engage with you. So yeah.
And I highly recommend checking out the podcast because I tell you, it is really, really good. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Thank you.
So I haven't checked out today's. I didn't even realize that it dropped on Tuesdays, right? So it's like, I think that's pretty cool. So now I think I've found my new routine in that I can listen to your podcast about an hour or so before I go into doing my broadcast.
There you go.
For my juicing out, because it is so good. It is so good.
Thank you.
And actually, you got a little vote of confidence here. Great show. Thank you very much to that. So we're going to kind of be sticking to this same theme going into next week. I don't know if this could be considered mental health, but I think it is. There's nothing wrong with a little wine and music to help with the mental health. Yes. So next week, I have guest Lauren Dixon, formerly known as Lauren Cole. She is an ECU grad, was actually a graduate of the Hospitality and Tourism Management Program at East Carolina when I was a faculty member there. She is a Winebow sales consultant. So next week, looking forward to connecting with her. We're just going to be talking about wine. We're going to be talking about music. Her husband is a musician. So I think this is one that a lot of people definitely should look at tuning into.
That's awesome.
Because I know, right? What's better
I love
than
some wine.
We
didn't talk about grape therapy because that's a thing.
We did, and I think next week I'll be indulging in some grape therapy while I'm talking to Lauren and listening to music. So
that's awesome.
We got actually another one of your biggest friends. Such a great conversation between
Jen Cross.
Two of some pros. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I would say it's more a pro over there and an amateur over here. So
stop it.
But Christine, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Of course.
I really do appreciate you.
Thanks
Everybody, I hope you have a great night. And as the real Dr. Jehu said, what'd you say? Be kind to yourself. Is that what? Be kind to yourself. Lord knows that people need it now more than ever to be kind to themselves and be kind to others. So I hope everybody has a great night, and I will see you all next week.
Bye.